Hello, everyone. My name here is Jason Snyder, and I'm the co-host of the Profitable Manufacturer. And today I have here with me.
And I'm Annette Lancey. I am the co-host of the Profitable Manufacturer with Jason. I'm also the owner of Cast Covers, a rock and fun manufacturing company based right here in the United States. And I'm also the founder and CEO of She Makes Products, where we help women product entrepreneurs break through the six-figure revenue barrier so they can grow and scale profitably and pay themselves first. And so today we're going to talk about the product life cycle and the 7 stages to it. Before I jump in, Jason, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just going to lead into what we were going to talk about today. A usually very complex topic. We're going to try to condense it down to make it understandable in the time that we have allotted for it today, enough to get the conversation started and you thinking about it in your business. If you haven't been thinking about it, there's some some stories that we can share of what not to do and what to be thinking about.
Yes. Okay, great. So we're going to get started. And so the first thing I wanted to tell you is there are 7 stages, as I mentioned. And the first stage is called creation. And what do I mean by that? Well, you have to come up with the idea. You have to create the idea. And you have to put it on a napkin. You have to tell somebody. This is a very important part because you start getting feedback. You start hearing yourself talk about your idea and your product, and it starts to come to life. And so it's truly a creation of an idea. And by the way, product manufacturers are way cool because we create things and we take we out of nothing we create something, so that's pretty cool. So that's the first stage, is the creation stage, and I want you to take the time and go through the process and make sure you really relish that time and you talk excitedly about it. You go to you do your internet research about it. That's all the creation part, and everybody does that. It's the people that do this but then don't move into the execution stage, because, for example, in my company, Cast Covers, where we make fun and functional products for the orthopedic patient, I've had people come up to me at trade shows. I had that idea. And it's not that my idea was so unique, it's just that I executed on it. So the creation phase is the first phase. And then the next phase is validation. And that's when you start having people, you start telling people about it. You maybe even start doing some focus groups about it. You've done a couple of dry runs. You perhaps have even got some basic test products. And so the validation to see if it's an idea, this is a tough time because this is when the naysayers start coming into your world and they start saying, what are you thinking of? You never even done anything like this. Are you, oh, there's something like this on the market. Oh, other people are doing it. And so the validation phase, you have to really give it, you have to hear what they're saying, but also be able to sift and filter through the negative Neds and the Debbie Downers, because they are out there and they will tell you you're nuts. And I had a lot of people tell me I was nuts about my product. Multi-million-dollar company now, and they don't say anything to me now. And so it's very important to validate. This can include focus groups. This can include the different, you do some dry runs, you do some, maybe you do Kickstarter, for example, that type of thing. Those are some of the ideas. But, and in a close cousin to that are prototypes. You must have prototypes. Oh my gosh, do I have stories about this? Okay, so prototypes mean you actually do the tool and die. You actually do the fabric cut and sew manufacture. Whatever it takes, you make sure you have it done to as best to your ability what it's going to be like in the marketplace with the right fabrics, with the right tools, with the right materials, whatever the case may be. You have to make sure that you have a good prototype so you can go out and field test it. And this is part of it kind of goes back and forth between the validation and the prototype. Let me tell you why this is so important. So I have a client who has a product, it's a backpack, and what they found out, they didn't test it. And what I mean by testing it is you have to stomp on it. You have to throw it in the washing machine, whatever the care instructions are. You have to wear it. You have to use it. You have to do everything that you think your customers would do with it. And don't think anything is silly. I mean, when I have my crutch covers, I threw them in the washer and I had a live camera on, went through, time rapid speed, took them out. Okay, they still look the same. Threw them in the dryer, took them out, still look the same. I didn't know. They might have turned out, they might have faded, they might have faded everything else. This is stuff you have to go through. So in this, back to this example I was giving about my client, the product bleeds on people's clothing only if there's water and friction, the combination. And what I mean by that is if it's raining and you're wearing it and you're kind of doing this. So of course the first thing we thought of is, well, throw it in the wash and see if it's color fast. And that didn't make any difference. It's the wash, it's the water and the friction. Those two things combined. So now they have to either take off the straps of the bags, which I wouldn't recommend, or send a note saying, just be careful not to wear it in the rain. I mean, that's really the best thing to do. But this is an example of not having a prototype and not going through this. This has to be part of your product life cycle in the development of your product. You must look at it. When I first started my company, I had, this is my cast cover. This is an example. And I had elastic on the end. And we're just going to use the arm as an example. Sold a whole bunch to a doctor's clinic, like over 600 units. And when you first get started, 600 units is a huge order, like celebration, pop the champagne. A couple weeks later, I get a phone call from, I believe it was the office manager. Anyway, and she said, do these have latex in them? And I said, I'll get back to you. And so I contacted, so first of all, I knew the fabric didn't, but I had elastic. And so I contacted my elastic supplier, and sure enough, I had elastic. And guess what? People have latex allergies, but it's typically an exposure allergy. And who gets latex allergies mostly? People in the medical dental field, because they're wearing latex gloves. They have latex. So even though they weren't going to be wearing these products, they're touching them. They could have an inflammatory response. Every single 600 of them, well, okay, at this point, 594, had to be sent back to me. This could have killed my company right there. And so what happened? Here's where I fell apart on this, is I got them, went, yay! Instead of sending them out like I normally would. What is my path of distribution? I would have sent them to a medical clinic. They would have asked me the question. I would have said, oh my gosh. And I would have possibly avoided this huge, huge problem. So it's really important with prototypes that you use them, abuse them, step on them, wash them, throw them around, whatever you need to do, whatever your product is. I have a friend who has a company that makes Murphy beds, and he makes Murphy bed kits. He's done everything right. But can you imagine if he hadn't done the right protocol, the right follow through, the right SOPs, and somebody like in the middle of the night, the bed snapped because, the coils were wrong. I mean, can you imagine? So you have to think what could happen, and don't let anybody say, oh, that's not going to happen. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And I've got many, many, many more stories, so we might be able to come back to that. So prototypes, very important. So the next phase, so you've got creation, validation, prototypes, and then you've got introduction. And introduction then is to the mass market. And that's where you really do. So Kickstarter is sometimes an idea, and you give it some thought, and then people put their money in, and then they get it to you eventually. And that's a really unique, cool way to introduce a product without really having to go through the prototype phase. But the introduction is when you do the launch, when you say the product is ready. You've already gone through the prototype phase, and so you introduce it to the market. Da 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 da. You launch. There it is. It's ready to go. And that's an important part too. You have to plan your launch. Don't just announce it. Absolutely, really think about who you're going to touch, who you're going to help, what customers you're going to serve. How does this impact your employees? Make it fun. If there's a big rush of orders to be expected, make sure you make it fun for your employees or your 3PL, whatever it is. And make sure you have everything in place to have that introduction, that launch go smoothly. Now, during this process, you're going to get into growth. So between introduction and growth is iteration. And so, for example, an iteration for my product would have been taking the elastic out, and creating something else or doing a different technique. That's a whole nother story. But you iterate your product. You have to innovate and iterate all the time. People will call you, customers will call you, and particularly if you start hearing the same thing over and over again, they've got a good idea. They've got a good thing. Don't take it as a personal offense. So make sure that you have the systems in place to be able to make these changes. An example of this is we have crutch wear bags. So you have crutches and you want to put your keys somewhere, you want to put your bottle of water, you want to, put your phone, and you're crutching along. So we have a bag, and it snaps to the crutch, and it's got a big pocket and it's got a smaller pocket. It's a really neat, handy thing while you're on crutches. Well, I had a customer call. I happened to take the call, and she said, the bag kind of flops when I use my crutches. Flop, flop. And she's right, it did. And I really never thought about it. I just thought, oh, well, I mean, really, that's what I thought. And I've been on crutches, and my daughter has been on crutches. And so, but this customer, she said, if you put some like loops on the back, that would take care of it. I went, oh my gosh. So I call them anchoring loops. She didn't call it that, and they're little tiny Velcro strips that we sew on the back. That's it. And that completely transformed the experience the customer had. And it's because I was open to it, and I thought about it, and I thought of the easiest way to make it done. And it's been a staple of our crutchwear bag for, I don't know, 10 years now, and we're a 15-year-old company. I mean, how cool is that? So listen to your customers. She just happened to be the only one that gave a really good idea. I don't recall other people saying, hey, the bag flops, but it was such a good idea. I incorporated it into the next production run. So when you have growth, make sure that you listen to your customers, iterate the product, innovate, and that could be even changing the design of the product to so you're relevant to the era or the fabric or something like that. I know we had some people, or actually we had one person ask if we had fabric with roosters on it. No. And the reason we didn't is because it was such a small market. Even though roosters were a big thing for a while, it's still a small market. And you do have to kind of make some decisions on that. So you do have to use some of your business instincts on things like that. So growth. So growth is very important. And then what's really interesting is maturity. So you have maturity. So, I've got some products that are now, 12 to 15 years old. And the only thing that really changes is the seasonality of the fabrics. Or maybe if I'm selling to an orthopedic clinic in Florida, I might have a little bit more summery kind of colors. If I'm closer to like a college university, guess what? Like University of Kentucky, we do that blue. We do that Kentucky blue, a lot of Kentucky blue. So those are some of the nuances that we can do while we're in maturity phase. And so it's really important that you recognize the maturity of a product, because here's an example. So I was a distributor of designer colored crutches, and I bought my distributor out because she wasn't selling any. I was selling a whole bunch, and I wanted to have vertical integration with everything. So I bought her out. And that's a whole nother story about what to look for when you buy somebody. I can share some of those stories too. So I got them, and it was a huge seller for us. And we had, black and yellow and red and pink, and black and pink and olive green, army green were our big selling colors. Yellow was a great color at the trade show booth, but it was not a big seller. And so what happened though is two things happened. Oh gosh, this had to have been about 8 years ago. Two things happened. This was a big seller, and they took up a lot of room in my warehouse. And they were a very labor-intensive product because I got raw crutches from Medline, which is a huge seller of aluminum crutches. I had to take apart all the rubber parts off, and I didn't do it. I had somebody do it who was good with tools. And then we had to find the right powder coater. That's another story. Found the right powder coater, and then got the right colors, and then got them back. And powder coating versus spraying, because powder coating is electrically charged, so they didn't fail. The colors didn't fail. They didn't rub off, they didn't scratch off, that type of thing. And then brought back, and then they had to be, the rubber parts and the other little pieces had to be put back together. Didn't take long, but it was a manual process. Plus, we had boxes and boxes in the warehouse and full of them because there were huge sellers. Well, about, I think it was 7, 8 years ago, things started to change. Pinterest came out, and so did dimensional weight shipping. And Pinterest came out, and all of a sudden, all these people are showing the really clever ways that they were decorating their crutches, ribbons and Swarovski crystals and bedazzling, and I mean, there was such amazing creativity with these crutches. At the same time, dimensional weight shipping came out, and that meant if you had a long box, which we had a very long box because of crutches, and heavy because of crutches, got hit hard with shipping costs. I couldn't say $80 for shipping. So I had to increase the crutch price and include the shipping. And so it was designer color crutches. And our customer base changed substantially, of course. My daughter, who was the inspiration for the company, if she had crutches, if had a need for crutches and Pinterest had come out, she had them before Pinterest came out. I would have gone to Michael's with her and wheeled her down the aisles and said, "Do you want a bedazzler? Let's get a glue gun. Let's put these sequins." I would have done the same thing. It would have been such a fun project for her. So that our client base changed to those that were chronic crutch users. So those were amputees or that had illnesses or something like that. So the crutches ended up languishing in my warehouse, taking up space, taking up room. And I just made a decision to, there's the decline, the seventh step. I made a decision to close out on our designer color crutches. And we sent a notice out to our best reoccurring, I call them encore customers because they keep coming back. Returning customers sounds like they return something. So my encore customers sent emails back, said, "Okay, we're closing out. Great sale. Here you go." And we sold out of quite a few, but we didn't sell the yellows. We didn't sell, some of the other colors. And I remember the day I had to take them all off the shelf. I didn't, the forklift did, but, and then off they went to a recycler, aluminum recycler. It was a sad day, but it was a necessary decision. And it cut my warehouse space in half. It cut labor costs because of the labor. I didn't need the labor anymore to put those together. It cut my shipping costs and everything. And we didn't see a dip in our top line revenue because we were able to focus on other things. So that's where decline comes in. You have to make decisions. Do I sell it? Do I change it? Do I shut it down? And I don't regret shutting it down. It makes me sad that I can't offer these crutches to our long-term customers, our encore customers. But what I did is explain to them when they would call and or email us is basically go to Goodwill, pick up a bunch of aluminum crutches, find a really good powder coater and say, the next time you run color XYZ, can you do these for me? And they can probably take the stuff off and the rubber off and be out. And so a lot of them were very thankful that I offered that. And so it was, so that's the decline of a product. So we go for our product life cycle again is creation. Got to come up. It's got to come somewhere. And the best way to do that is if you say, why don't they? Replace that with, why don't I? So come up with an idea. So come up with an idea and start creating it. Validation, start getting some validation. Start doing your research. One thing I'll tell you is when I started with cast covers, I went online. Now, this is 15 years ago. Okay, online research was not what it is today. But I still went online and looked up cast covers, the phrase, cover your cast, things like that. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing. And so I said, woohoo! I'm going to create a category. Yay! Got the business started, going. 6 months later, all of a sudden, there pops up somebody that had been doing it for a while. And I was shocked. But by then, I had already had pretty good momentum. And so I continued on. If I had seen her before, I may have shut the idea down. So just because you see somebody with the same idea does not mean that you shouldn't pursue it. Think of all the different ketchups that are out there and all the different mascaras. That's what I always tell everybody. There's mascaras for if you want to stay up late all night. Well, that's not me. I want mascara that just looks normal. Maybe there's mascaras for swimming. You want to swim. So think of all the different things. So your product idea, even if there's something out there that is similar or identical, the way you message it, the way you brand it will speak to your people. So Cast Covers is all about feel better, heal better. We're happy, we're joyful. You've got a serious situation, but it's okay. It's going to be a story in your future. Don't worry about it. And so there was a competitor that was called Pretty Hurt, and which I thought was the coolest name, but she was all about skulls and death and blood, and she didn't last long. So it just shows that it's really important to put your stamp to it. So remember the validation phase, but keep it in perspective. And then you have the prototypes, very important. And every time you change your product, every time you've got to try it, throw it against the wall, stomp on it, do everything. Think of like I just bought a dog harness for my dog, and I'm guessing that they went through the mud with it. They threw it at dogs, had dogs chew it, a whole bunch. You have to do that. Do not miss that step. And then introducing it to the market, growth, make your iterations, make your changes, and then maturity. Watch it just be your cash cow. By then, you've got all your systems and processes in place. And then there is a natural decline to every product. I think one of my favorites, well, it's sad, but Kodak, they'd film. And they did not take into consideration the digital world. And so now, of course, they're coming back because it's kind of a retro, kind of a cool kind of thing. But they didn't. So there was a natural decline. And there could have been a lot of things they could have done differently at the end. And I just described one product. So just keep all of that in mind. And I just want to see if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask us. Jason, what would you like to add to that?
Comment about ketchup reminded me about mustards, like how many different mustards.
ketchup and mascaras. That's what I always say, ketchup and mascaras.
I'll add mustards to it. But
yeah.
But yeah, it's especially the prototype thing, and I'll use the term validation in services industries. We call it getting validation through your first customers to come in, pay you for it. So if you can find a way to include a customer paying for you, your friends and family are always going to tell you, it's a fantastic idea. You should go for it. If you can seek it out, it's not always the case in product businesses, but if you can find a way to get some first small orders, like you said, out of the prototype age, go for it, because that's going to give you the best, most honest feedback in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely. And just to echo what Jason said, friends and family, especially the ones that really love you, are there to just say, oh yeah, that a girl, yeah, you go for it. Okay. What you really need is outside validation. But then on the flip side, then you've got some people that are just like, who do you think you are? You can't do this. And they're in your inner circle. Oh, you need to also get outside and find a close network of people that have your best interests at heart, and that will definitely give you the feedback that you need to hear, good and bad. But they'll do it well. They'll do it well too. So
yeah. So that was, but the only thing I was going to add to it is that part of it, because if it's a really important stage of it before you commit a lot of, depending on what your MOQs are going to be and some other things, the better data you can have at that point, because it can have a lot of knock-on effects down the road as well.
Absolutely. So, okay. So I think this will wrap it up, and we thank you for watching us. We promise to always keep it short and informative and actionable. So hopefully this was helpful. Put your comments down below or wherever, because we're in different platforms.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.